Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. If you guys have watched a few videos on my channel, you'll know that I love a good do-it-yourself project, and although there are beautiful dyes and things out there that can create this look, I am here to do it myself using what I already have. So I really wanted to create this kind of beautiful, intense trellised look for my card today. So I am going to have a bit of fun creating that, and you can definitely do this at home with the supplies that you probably already have as well. So first off, I am going to create a little bit of a background. I am using a pink piece of cardstock, and this is from the Peppermint paper pad from scrapbook.com, but anything is going to work here, and this is purely just a background. Then I have two of the oval dies from my Hero Arts Infinity ovals die set. I'm using a little bit of low-tech tape under one of them, and then I place the inside one just a little bit inside of that, and so that way I will get a nice skinny frame. And I'm going to pop this on a piece of white cardstock and run it through my die cutting machine. This low-tech tape from scrapbook.com, the mint tape, is one of the best that I have tried. I have purchased many of these, and this is the best perfect amount of tack that I have tried. So this is always my go-to, and I'm actually going to cut out 4 of these little frames because I want to give this card a little bit of dimension. Now I know that this kind of feels wasteful, cutting out frames out of perfectly good pieces of paper. However, I always use all of the ovals, and here I'm going to use the outside part of that and create these very thin little strips. Now you can choose how thin you want your strips to be. You can choose if you want them to be a little bit wider, and you can do less trellising, or I went for a pretty skinny look because this was going to be a really dainty kind of card. Now this is my method as to how I create this. However, you may have a much more efficient way than I do. I put down a little piece of that low-tech tape, and I actually just used the same low-tech tape to tape it down to my desk so that it is sticky side up. And then I am just going to eyeball this. I am not a big fan of measuring things. I will avoid it if I can. So I'm just going to eyeball, keeping them roughly all the same distance apart, and then I'm going to thread through the other ones, weave it up, down, and I'm going to weave through these vertical strips through this little trellis here, and this will kind of create my own look. If you don't want to go with the over under, you can simply just lie them all down in one direction and then lie them all down on top of that in the other direction. It gives pretty much the same look, except for it doesn't have that kind of really over under look. But if this is just too much for you, then just lie them on top of each other and you'll be good to go. Now as for size, I was just holding those frames close by, and every now and then I kind of popped it on top and see if I need to make it a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. And I knew I wanted my trellis to kind of be on the angle rather than kind of straight up and down. I feel like that kind of looks more like trellising. Then once I think I've got it all done, I'm going to pop a little bit more of the low-tech tape on 2 more of those sides. I reuse this low-tech tape over and over again. I just stick it up on my little desk, and then I just rip it off or use it as I need. So I'm not worried about using it here to hold down these temporarily for me. I'm taking one of the frames and I'm using some liquid glue. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. It is a very strong glue once it dries, and it is also completely sheen free. When it dries and you squish it a little bit, there's no sheen or shine or anything. You're not going to see any evidence of the glue left over. So that is really important for me when I'm choosing my glues, and this is my go-to glue. I have popped one frame down there, and this is kind of the nice side up of the cutting die for the oval. Then I put a heavy acrylic block on there, and I left it for probably maybe 5 minutes or so to make sure that it was properly dry and I wasn't going to kind of have anything fall apart on me. I take apart those outside pieces, and you can see I stuck them up on my thing in front of me, and then I am going to gently cut around the outside and cut off all of this excess. I am using my little sharp cutter bee scissors, and they kind of get under there nicely, and I'm kind of angling them so that you won't be able to see anything from the sides, just angling them so it kind of cuts it underneath that outside frame. So the frame is going to make a perfect little kind of tidy up of all of the borders of those pieces. And it has adhered down to all of those bits of the trellising, so I know that nothing is going to come unstuck at this point. Now, as for the extra frames, I cut those all out because I wanted to give this a little bit more dimension. Of course, there are so many different options. Rather than layering this up with cardstock, you could definitely just use a really skinny, thin foam strips. I have some of those. I could have used those. And I just chose to use cardstock this time around to give it a bit more stability. So I am going to glue these together with the liquid glue, and I am gluing these frames onto the rear side, so the back side of my trellis, so that it is lifted up off my page a little bit, and this will give me a little bit of dimension. Although this card is one that I'm going to hand deliver, depending on what you add on top of this, you could definitely make it one that would go through the mail just fine. Now, with everything in this video today, there are so many different ways that you could go with this. So this is just my version, and included in that is how I'm going to create my flowers. So I am choosing to use the watercolor brush markers. This is the spring set, and this one felt like the colors that kind of most resonate with me, that I would use most often. And I'm just going to use these to create a kind of background for me to do all of my die cutting. You could use Distress Oxide inks, you could use any sort of dye inks that are water reactive to do this watercolor look. You could use watercolor pencils to do this, watercolor paints. You could use absolutely anything that you have. You could use gelatos if you still have some of those. I have used some Tim Holtz watercolor paper, which is my favorite go-to watercolor paper. It's the only one I use, in fact, and I have sprayed down a little bit of water, and then I'm popping down a generous amount of this ink here. For this one, I chose the yellow, the orange, and the red, but honestly, I probably shouldn't have used the the orange, because the red and the yellow together are going to make the orange anyway, and this card ended up a little bit darker than what I was anticipating. I wanted a little bit more yellow, but these are great experiments. And I also have my daughter next to me who is itching to do her own die cutting at this point, so I knew that I would make a few of these and we would just see how we go, and we'd have plenty to go around for the both of us to make our cards. So this one I just chose to do a little bit of the orange and more of the yellow, and this was kind of more of the look that I was going for. At this point, I had thought that I might do the yellow and orangey kind of colored flowers, but actually I end up completely changing my mind. So I'm going to pull out a purple and some blue, and all of these I have spritzed down a bit of water before I pop the ink on, and that way it moves around really, really nicely. I'm just adding a little bit of purple, and then I'm using my heat gun to dry these. These do dry beautifully on their own if you choose to leave them. I, of course, I'm a little bit impatient, so usually I don't have a whole lot of time to do my crafting, so a heat gun is going to help me along this process. And then once it is all nice and dry, I am going to do a little bit for the leaves, and for that I chose to use a couple of the different greens. There is the perfect light green and the perfect kind of darker green. This one I didn't use any water at all, I just used the pens, and I really like this look as well. So you don't have to use the water and dilute down the color at all, and it moves nicely just with the ink. So I'm just kind of using the brush to move it around a little bit. And I wasn't sure quite how much space I would need. I knew I just wanted to cut the leaves out of this one, so I didn't really need a full sheet either. But I always save all these little scraps that are left white, because I am forever needing little bits of watercolor paper and things, so they don't go to waste at all. And this is about when I chose to use the blue sheet to do all of my little flowers, because that's something a little bit different for me. I often go with yellows and oranges and things, so just to do something a bit different, I am going to do blue. And then I have got a couple of different dyes. I just go through my stash, have a look, see what you can find, use what you have, and you'll be able to find some flowers to pop together and some leaves or foliage or whatever you have, and you can honestly make it work. I did want to give these a little bit of dimension, so I often curl them around a pencil a little bit or anything like that. You can just use your fingers to kind of crease them or bend them up or bend them down, anything to give them a little bit more dimension than just being completely flat. And you'll find that when you layer these up and pop them together, that it really makes a huge difference to the finished flower. So all I do is pop a little bit of glue in the middle, and then I either put 2, 3 or 4, however many I want to put together, just to give it a little bit more dimension and make a nice kind of full flower. I'm going to skip through this part pretty fast because you guys have seen me do this a little bit before, and so I have created, I think there is 6 flowers there with a little bit of foliage, and it's time to pop our card together. Now I always double check before I end up gluing, just because I'm never quite sure if I had it ready or had it right the first time, or if I've accidentally grabbed the wrong piece of paper or something like that. So I'm going to glue this down onto my card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. My gorgeous little oval trellis piece there I'm going to pop down, and I really like the look of this, but it's going to get even better. We're going to do some more things to this to make it look gorgeous. I pretty much feel like everything in this video today you are able to create using things that you have in your stash. If you've been card making for any length of time, then you probably have most of these things, your own little favorite flowers that create, dies that create flowers, sorry, or you could use stamps and fussy cut them out. And everybody usually has a little bit of foliage. For me, that's like a really important couple of sets of dies to have, is a few foliage dies. So I feel like this is something that is very achievable with not too many crazy supplies at all. So I am just popping the little flowers on, 3 at the top right, 3 at the bottom left, and then this green foliage just makes it all really pop. I was really impressed with how this kind of made the card come together, and I'm just popping exactly 4 on each side. I don't even end up using those 2 other leaves there. I feel like I didn't need those at all. I really like how it kind of frames the trellis, but it doesn't hide all of it. Then I'm using the Word Fragments stamp set and stamping it out in some VersaFine Onyx black ink. I am stamping out Happy Birthday because I know who this is going to, this card. And I just use my long bladed scissors to cut this out with a little border as well. I like that it has a little black border. It really makes it pop off the background. And I'm going to pop this up on a little bit of foam, some foam squares, just to give it some more dimension and make it stand up off that background. As I said, this one is being hand delivered, so I wasn't too worried about the dimension factor here. Now I will pop links to anything that I can find in the description box below, although as I said, these are kind of my favorite go-to flowers that I've had right from the beginning of my card making. So I'm sure that you have something in your stash, but I will do my best to link anything down below that I have used in this video. Then this is where I'm going to step this up a little bit. I am deciding to take these little gorgeous kind of, they're almost like raindrop gems or something. There's lots of different sizes on the one piece there, and I'm going to pop one on every little crisscross, and it kind of gives it a little bit of bling, a little bit shiny, just a little bit something extra, although you definitely don't have to do this. Then for the insides of the flowers, I was just checking out which colour I might like to go with, but I did decide to go with the nice blue ones, and just because I didn't want the flowers to kind of stand out anymore. I didn't want to take away from the trellis anymore, because that was one of the fun features of the card. But thank you so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate all of the support, and I hope that you have enjoyed this card today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!